The man collapsed at 7:22 on a Thursday morning on the floor of the third corridor of Tema General Hospital. 1 meter from the cleaning trolley Adais and Wosu had been pushing since 5 a.m. He fell the way old men fall when they have been holding themselves upright for too long. Not suddenly, but in stages, first the shoulder against the wall, then the knees, then the whole weight of him settling on the tiles like something that had simply run out. His briefcase hit the floor before he did, and the clasp popped open, and the papers inside fanned out across the clean section she had just finished mopping. She could have kept pushing the trolley. It was 7:22 in the morning, and the first shift supervisor, Mr. Quay, had told her twice that month that she was not paid to make decisions, only to keep the floors clean. There were nurses 40 meters down that corridor. There was a call button on the wall behind her at chest height. She had 17 more rooms to finish before 9 a.m. And if she did not finish before 9 a.m., she would not finish before Mr. Quay came to inspect, and if Mr. Quay came to inspect and found rooms unfinished, there would be a conversation about whether her performance justified the 480 cedis a month they were currently paying her. She knelt down beside him anyway. His name was Emmanuel Owusu Barton. She would not know that for another 6 days. What she knew at 7:22 on that Thursday was that he was breathing, but the breathing was shallow. That one side of his mouth had gone loose in a way she had seen before on a man at this exact hospital 4 years ago. That his left hand was closed tight around a keyring with a single brass key attached to it, and that his shirt collar was buttoned all the way to the top. She loosened the collar button with 2 fingers. She placed her folded cleaning cloth under his head. She called down the corridor for the nurse whose station she could see from where she was kneeling. A young woman named Efwa, who had barely looked up when Adais passed her cart every morning for 2 years. She called her name twice. Efwa looked up on the second call. "This man needs help," Adais said, not loudly, not frantically, the way you say something when you know it to be true, and you need the other person to know it too. Adaese Nwosu was 51 years old, 58 kilograms, and the weight loss was the kind that happens over 14 months when a woman is feeding 2 children on a single income and has quietly stopped eating dinner in order to make the numbers work. She wore a blue and gray uniform that the hospital issued. Boot under it, a white undershirt she had bought herself from a market stall on Tama Station Road for 8 cedis, because the hospital issue uniform was thin across the shoulders and the early morning. Corridors were cold. Her shoes were black rubber-soled flats that had been resold once already at a cobbler near her house in Community 4. She walked almost 12 kilometers a day on those shoes. The soles showed it. The uppers she polished every Sunday evening on the small concrete step outside her front door, the same way her mother had polished shoes in Enugu. Slowly, and with a piece of old cotton cloth, as though the act of polishing was itself a kind of prayer. She had worked at Tema General for 11 years. She had come the month after her husband, Frederick, went to work on a fishing vessel out of Takoradi and did not come back. There was no body. There was no final message. There was only a phone call from a man she did not know, who used the word accident twice and then stopped talking. Her daughters were 4 and 7 at the time. She had taken the hospital job 3 weeks after that phone call because it was the first job that answered. It paid 180 cedis a month in the beginning. It paid 480 now. She had not missed a single shift in 11 years. Mr. Quay had noted this once, in passing, in a tone that made it sound like reliability was slightly suspicious. She kept, in the front pocket of her cleaning trolley, a small tin that had once held throat lozenges. Inside the tin were 3 things: a photograph of Frederick from 1998, taken on the day of their traditional ceremony, in which he was wearing a yellow kente cloth and looking at something to the left of the camera with an expression she had never been fully able to name. A folded piece of paper with her daughter's school schedules written in her own handwriting, and a blue-capped pen she had found on the floor of room 14, 2 years ago, still working, which she used to write the schedules down fresh each term. The tin stayed in the pocket of the trolley from 5 a.m. until she returned the trolley to the supply room at 2 p.m. When she collected it at the end of each shift, she placed it in the left front pocket of her dress with the same small, deliberate motion, the same small press of her fingers against the shape of it through the fabric, every single day. The man, Emmanuel, was admitted to the ward by 7:45 a.m. She had gone back to her rooms. She had finished by 9:06 a.m., 7 minutes late, and Mr. Quay had made a note on his clipboard. She did not think about Emmanuel Osu Boateng again that day. She had rent to pay on Friday. Her younger daughter, Grace, needed new school sandals, and the school term started in 11 days. Her older daughter, Nana, had been asked by her teacher to bring a calculator to class. The calculator at the stall near the house cost 38 cedis. She had 61 cedis in the envelope at the back of her kitchen cabinet, and after the week's food, she would have roughly 22 cedis left. And after the bus fares, she would have roughly 12. And after Grace's sandals, she would have nothing. And the calculator would have to wait unless she could negotiate with the sandal seller about price, which she would try, because she always tried. Because trying was the only mechanism she had available. She did not know, when she left the hospital that Thursday afternoon, that Emmanuel Osu Boateng was lying in room 7 of Ward C with a chart at the end of his bed that noted, among other things, found on floor, third corridor, assisted to recovery position by hospital cleaning staff, collar loosened prior to medical team arrival. She did not know that the doctor who reviewed his admission, a Doctora Santepoku, had written in his notes that the loosened collar and recovery position had been, in his precise and unhurried professional opinion, significant. She did not know that Emmanuel's daughter, a woman named Constance, who drove from East Legon in 34 minutes when her phone rang that morning, had asked Dr. Asante Poku twice who had found her father. She did not know that Dr. Asante Poku had said he didn't have a name, only a job title, and that Constance had asked at the nurse's station, and that Efwa, who had barely looked up in 2 years, had said the name without hesitation. Adais, the cleaner. She's here every morning. By the time any of this mattered, it was the following Tuesday. Emmanuel Owusu Baten spent 4 days in Ward C. On the 4th day, a Saturday, he asked the duty nurse for a piece of paper and a pen. On that paper, he wrote 7 lines in a handwriting that was still not quite steady, but was recognizably the handwriting of a man who had spent many years writing careful things. A folded the paper once. He asked the nurse to find the cleaning woman who had helped him on Thursday morning in the third corridor. The nurse, who was not Efwa but had spoken to Efwa, said she would try. She found Adais in the supply room at 1:45 p.m., returning her trolley. The piece of paper said, "My name is Emmanuel Osu Boateng. You helped me on Thursday morning. He would like to thank you properly. If you are willing, please come to room 7 before you leave today. I will not take much of your time." She stood in the supply room for a moment with the paper in her hand. Mr. Quay was not present. She folded the paper and placed it in the pocket with the tin. She went to room 7 at 2:05 p.m. He was sitting upright in the hospital bed, wearing his own clothes, because he had asked Constance to bring them. It was 74 years old, and he was a tall man, even sitting, with a face that had the particular stillness of someone who had spent many years listening rather than speaking. His hands rested flat on the sheet. He thanked her. She told him it was nothing. He told her it was not nothing. She told him she was glad he was better. He asked her her name. She told him. He asked her how long she had worked at this hospital. She told him 11 years. He looked at his hands on the sheet for a moment, and then he looked back at her. "I want to give you something," he said. "You don't need to give me anything," she said. "I know," he said, "but I want to." She told him she had to catch the 2:30 bus or wait an hour for the next one. He told her he understood. He thanked her again. She said goodbye and walked back through the third corridor past the place where she had found him and caught the 2:30 bus and got home at 3:47 p.m. and started rice for dinner. She did not think too much about what he had said. People said things when they were in hospital beds, and then they went home, and the things they said dissolved back into ordinary life. She had seen it 11 years worth of times. If this story is already sitting somewhere in your chest, stay with me. What comes next is something Ades herself never saw coming. Grace got her sandals. The sandal seller gave 5 cedis off, because Ades asked quietly and without embarrassment, and the seller had known her for 3 years. Nana waited on the calculator. Ades paid the rent on Friday, 200 cedis to the landlord's wife who took it with both hands, and said nothing. The following Tuesday, Ades arrived at the hospital at 4:58 a.m. She collected her trolley. She started the first corridor. At 8:14 a.m., Mr. Quay came to find her. He was not carrying his clipboard. This was unusual enough that she stopped pushing the trolley and waited for him to say what he had come to say. He told her there was a man in the administration office waiting to speak to her. A lawyer, Mr. Quay said, with an expression that indicated he did not know what to do with this information. He said the man had come at 8 a.m. When the office opened and had asked for her by her full name, Adese Nwasu, the cleaning staff, Mr. Quay had personally confirmed that she was on shift. She left the trolley in the corridor. The lawyer's name was Mr. Tobena Achebe. It was a short, careful man in a dark gray suit who had placed a thin brown briefcase on the chair beside him and did not open it until she had sat down across from him. It told her his firm had been retained by the family of Emmanuel Osu Boateng. He told her that Emmanuel Osu Boateng had passed away on Sunday morning. The stroke had suffered on Thursday had been his second. He had known it was his second. He had not, the lawyer said, been entirely surprised. She sat with that. Mr. Achebe opened the briefcase. He removed a single document. He placed it on the table facing her and turned it so she could read it from where she sat. It told her that Mr. Osu Boateng had updated a specific clause in his will on the Saturday afternoon, while still in Ward C, in the presence of two witnesses and a notary who had come to the hospital at Constance's arrangement. It told her that the document was fully legal and had been filed that morning. He told her to take her time reading it. She read it twice. The clause directed that a sum of 280,000 cedis, which represented the proceeds of the sale of a second property Emmanuel had held in cantonments, a property Constance had told him 3 times to sell, and which he had not sold for reasons he had never fully explained to her, be placed in a trust for the benefit of Ades and Wosu, to be used at her sole discretion. She looked up from the document. She looked at Mr. Achebe. He didn't know me, she said. He knew what you did, Mr. Achebe said. She put both hands flat on the table the way Emmanuel had put his hands flat on the sheet. She breathed through her nose once, slowly. Mr. Achebe, who had been a lawyer for 28 years and had delivered news of many kinds in many offices, sat quietly and let her take the time that was required. A clock on the administration office wall read 8:30, 1 a.m. Outside the window, a bus on the main road, going toward Tema Station, groaned as it slowed for the stop. The thing she thought of first was not the money. The thing she thought of first was the tin in the pocket of the trolley, still parked in the third corridor. She thought, I need to go back and get it before someone moves the trolley. She thought about this for 11 seconds before she was able to think about anything else. She asked Mr. Achebe if she could take the document home to read again. He told her she could take it. It was hers. It placed it back in the briefcase, and then removed it again and placed it in front of her. He told her the funds would be accessible within 21 days pending final estate processing. He gave her a card with his name and a number and told her to call if she had questions. She put the card in her left front pocket with the 10. She went back to the third corridor. The trolley was where she had left it. She put her hand in the pocket and felt the shape of the tin through the fabric of her dress, as she had felt it every day for years. And then she took it out and held it in her hand, in the middle of the third corridor of Tema General Hospital, and stood very still. She did not cry. Not then. What she did was finish the last 11 rooms on her morning list, because they still needed to be done, and she was still the person whose job it was to do them. She finished at 9:03 a.m. She returned the trolley at 2 p.m. She told no one. She called her older daughter, Nana, from the bus stop. Nana was 18 and in her final year of secondary school and had been accepted provisionally to the University of Ghana in Legon, pending fees. She answered on the third ring. Adais told her she had something to tell her when she got home. Nana asked if everything was okay. Adais said yes. She said, I think everything is going to be okay. She had not said that sentence in 14 years. Within 6 months, Constance Osu Boateng, who had her father's stillness and her own particular directness, came to meet Adais for tea at a small place on Osu Oxford Street that Adais had never been to before. It had chairs with cushions. Constances told Adais that her father had said, in the hours between the second stroke and the Sunday morning when he did not wake up, that the woman in the corridor had treated him like a person at a moment when he had very little left. A had said this to Constance, and she had written it down because she knew her father, and she knew what he said before sleep was what he actually meant. Constance asked Adace what she planned to do with the money. Adace told her she had enrolled Grace in a school with a proper science laboratory because Grace wanted to be a doctor. She had paid 2 years of Nana's university fees. She had bought a small refrigerator because the one she had borrowed from her neighbor 9 years ago had never quite worked. And she was thinking, she said slowly, about a cleaning services business, real equipment, a small team, contracts with private clinics. She had 11 years of knowledge about what hospitals actually needed, and nobody was paying her for that knowledge. She was going to start paying herself for it instead. Constance looked at her across the table with cushioned chairs and said nothing for a moment. Then she said that her firm had just moved into new offices in East Legon, and their current cleaning contract was up for renewal in 2 months. She slid a business card across the table. She told Adace to send her a proposal. Adace put the card in her left front pocket, her fingers pressed against the shape of the tin. Still there, still carrying the photo and the schedules, and the blue pen. She sent the proposal on a Friday, typed carefully on Nana's school laptop at the kitchen table. She priced it correctly, not cheaply, because she knew exactly what the work cost, and she was done with the habit of undervaluing it. Constance accepted the proposal on a Tuesday. It was the same day of the week Emmanuel had collapsed. Adaise noticed this and did not say it to anyone but thought about it on the bus home. Mr. Quay received her resignation letter on a Wednesday morning. It was one paragraph, formal and courteous, with the required 2 weeks' notice. He read it at his desk. He looked up at her. He looked back at the letter. He said nothing. She walked back through the third corridor for the last time on her final shift. 14 days later, pushing the trolley she had pushed for 11 years. The floors were the same floors. The fluorescent light above room 12 still flickered. The call button on the wall behind where she had knelt on a Thursday morning was still at chest height. She stopped the trolley for a moment in that exact spot and looked at the section of floor she had mopped that morning, and then kept pushing. She collected the tin from the trolley pocket at 2 p.m. She placed it in her left front pocket. She signed out at the desk. She walked through the main entrance of Tema General Hospital into the afternoon light, and she did not look back. And the door swung closed behind her, the way doors do when someone has finished with what was on the other side. Emmanuel Ousubaten thought he was giving her 280,000 cedis, and he was. But what he was also giving her was permission. Permission to name what she had always known was true. That the work she had done was real. That the years she had spent were not nothing. That the woman who knelt on a clean floor at 7:22 on a Thursday morning had always been worth more than the people she worked for had noticed. The money did not make her valuable. It made it impossible for the world to pretend otherwise. There is a version of this story where Adaise never kneels down, where she keeps pushing the trolley because she has rooms to finish and a supervisor watching and 480 cities a month to protect. That version of the story exists in the lives of thousands of people who could not afford the risk of pausing. We are not judging those people. We are bearing witness to the one who did kneel, and to what that cost her nothing and gave her everything. Because here is what nobody can take from you. What you do when nobody is watching and nobody is counting, and nobody will give you credit for it. What you do at 7:22 on a Thursday morning when the floor is clean and the clock is running and the easiest thing in the world would be to keep walking. That is the part of a person that no employer owns, no contract governs, no dismissal touches. You carry that with you. You carry it in your hands into every room you enter for the rest of your life. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, the world turns around and sees it. Subscribe for more stories about people the world overlooked until they changed everything. Hidden strength, quiet power, stories that end the way they should have started. Before you go, I have one question for you. If you helped someone at the worst possible cost to yourself, and they died before they could tell you they were grateful, but the gratitude found you anyway, years later, in a form you never expected, what would you do with it? Not the money, the permission. Leave your answer in the comments. I want to read every single one. I'll see you in the next one.